do not get into a situation with your children where they become adults, they don't want to spend time with you. I just feel like when you first hold that newborn baby in your hands, everything about your mindset changes towards the world, but especially about the future. It's now, I really don't want to screw this place up for you. I believe you choose to be optimistic or pessimistic, and it fundamentally changes the opportunities that are presented to you in life. I'm so happy most days and optimistic about the future, and I wish everybody could feel the same way about the world, because I think that's the way the world really was meant to be.
Cool. Well, good afternoon there, Adam Rossi. Thanks so much for joining me today, buddy, on round 2 of the Ridiculously Human podcast.
Gareth, thanks so much for having me back. I'm super excited to chat with you again here.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. So I actually want to start this off with a feel-good story, right? You have introduced me to, I think, 5 or 6 previous guests, okay? So, thanks a lot for that. But also just the power of networking, which I think is one of the most important sort of skills for almost anybody to have, because it can open up your world to, unknown things, really. So you introduced me to one of my previous guests, Derek Notman, who you know through a group of dads called Rebel Dads. And I had a great podcast with him, and then we got chatting because he has a South African connection, his mom's South African, and he's also into wealth management. And one of my best friends here in South Africa is also into wealth management. He works for Investec, one of the big companies here. And I was like, you must speak to Gary, right? And maybe there's something in there for you guys to sort of follow up on or whatever it is. And literally, 30 minutes before we were going to start this call, I got an email from Derek, and he's like, I just had a great Zoom with Gary. He's like, we're going to, there's a good chance that we're going to sort of do work together, and I'm going to meet him in November for lunch in South Africa. So I was like, wow, that's cool.
That's such a great story. I mean, I think it's one of the great services we can all do, right? Just, we all have connections in our network, and just to link people up like that. And then you have that fractal pattern of then they make connections further and further and further. And I'm always impressed with people that will say, you know what, I need to introduce you to so-and-so. Some people are much better at it than others, right? And so I think it's great. Derek's great. I listened to that podcast and it was awesome as well. And so listen, I mean, this is the good power of social media, linking up interesting people that share similar values and interests. We never could have done this before, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it is so cool. And I think it's one of my only, not only, but it's one of my decent skills in life is networking. I've always kind of thought, why don't you guys should talk to each other? That's always been my kind of attitude when I meet people. I was like, and then I think, if more of us could actually do that, because we actually all do have pretty good networks. If we can say, even just one person, try and introduce you to one person, seriously, we could change the world really kind of quickly in many, I think.
And how many stories do you hear about a chance introduction that turned into an amazing relationship or company or something, right? It's this happens, and it's magic, and it's a magic that we can actively control and introduce into the world if we just try to do it more often.
Yeah, definitely. So you've just come off this awesome boat trip. I think it's a Scouts boat trip week where you took these young guys. You were the leader, or one of the leaders. I'm not sure exactly on this week with these young guys. I love how you sort of invest in the younger generation. But yeah, just reading some of your posts and the stories, I couldn't help but just giggle, and thinking these guys, they're having the best time ever. They're probably super sleep deprived. They're learning so much. How was it? The photos looked amazing and the stories sounded great.
Yeah, it was amazing. So 7 days on a rusty junk bucket, 52-foot steel hull sailboat with, no shower or a very, very minimal comforts, right? So you sleep on the deck on a bedroll. It rains just about every night, so you get wet. You can't take a shower, wash your hands. You wear basically the same clothes all week, and you just jump into the ocean. And then when you get out, there's no towel, and so you drip dry on the deck, and you learn to sail, right? Which I uh am not an experienced sailor, so we had an experienced captain. We had three adult leaders, 11 scouts, and or I'm sorry, nine scouts, three adult leaders. And so it's one of those things where it's a reminder kids don't need fancy vacations. They don't need very expensive hotels. They thrive in an adventure setting, right? And so this was not an expensive trip. It's purposely the scouting organization. It's called Sea Base, the trip. It's the attempt is any scout should be able to afford this. So accommodations are kept to an absolute minimum. Food is kept to, these are the basics. And the kids get they learn how to sail. They cook their own meals. They clean the boat. They operate the boat, and the adults are there just to kind of make sure nobody falls off or gets hurt. Um, and so it's one of these things where I am beyond blessed. I thought about this from a gratitude perspective because one night I'm laying there on the deck and it starts raining and it's cold, right? And I'm kind of like, what, why am I? And then I said, wait a second. This is a blessing beyond belief. I have the flexibility in my life to take a week. Not many of the parents do, right? I'm physically healthy enough to do this. Um, and I am the luckiest guy in the world to be laying on this boat with these guys, watching them grow, being a mentor to them. Uh, and it kind of makes you think, okay, whatever I'm worried about with rain or stinky, and these guys are like constantly farting and burping, right? It's like I can't let myself be annoyed. I have to recognize what an amazing experience this is for me as well.
And the cool thing is like these are memories and I guess lessons and whatever too that they're going to talk about for ages, and they're going to think about it and remember it 20, 30 years down the line, guaranteed.
It guaranteed, and it's like how many vacations do we go on or trips do we go on where you ask your kids, what was your favorite part about that? And they'll be like, oh, it was the stray cats we were playing with. And you're kind of like, all right, well, I paid for a fancy like museum trip or but it's always the little weird things that they remember, right? It's
Yeah.
like those, and so this is the type of trip where it's the same way. Like the kids loved it. The things that they liked, are goofy and weird, and but they were even like, you know what? This is the first time in my life I haven't taken a shower in 7 days. And they're like, it's actually not that bad. It's like, guys, don't get into a habit here. Like this is a special situation.
Yeah, and it reminds me, I mean, years ago I went on a sailing trip with one of my mates, and it was like a weekend of racing. And
Mm.
I was speaking to him not too long ago, and I was like, Bud, do you remember that night we found those massive showers? Like it's like communal showers. And I was like, you and I must have had like a 3 hour shower. And we were kicking around this piece of soap, like ridiculous things, because the water like became the shower became like waterlogged, right? And we had this piece of soap, and we were kicking around the soap for like 2 hours, and it's that sort of stuff that you remember. Like you said, it's the real small things that you're like, man, that was so much fun, wasn't it?
And part of it is just it's kind of unconstrained, right? It wasn't like a lot of kids programs where it's like at noon you will do this, then you will do this, then we will have a session, right? It was just totally unconstrained, and I think kids don't get enough of that. There's also a lot of parents who would probably say, I don't want my kid doing that. It's dangerous, right? There are a lot of parents who would not have agreed to this. And objectively, you look at it, it's like, hey, we're sleeping on the deck of a sailboat. Like a kid could roll off into the ocean, right? Like it's possible. We're going to fish him out. But like for a lot of parents, they would say, no, this is potentially too dangerous for my child. And what I would just say is if kids don't get exposed to this stuff, they can't grow. And they become kind of fearful and calcified in how they, they're what they do and experience. So yeah, man, like kicking around soap in a communal shower. I mean, like this is the type of stuff kids need, right? It's fun, and this is where the magic happens, and I don't think it's in a classroom a lot of times.
Yeah. And when did you find yourself, say, becoming less protective as a dad? Like not like say not less protective, but like more kind of lenient and going, okay, cool. I know my son or my daughter, like they need to learn now. Do you remember like or
I've always been that way.
okay.
It does cause a little bit of tension between me and my wife because my wife will, I mean, we're aligned in this, but I think mothers generally are a little more concerned about physical safety, whereas I'm kind of like, look, you know, finger gets broken, it'll heal, right?
Yeah.
And so it's maybe a little bit of tension between my wife and I about, should we be letting the kids do this at this age, or, um, but I've just always felt like I lived a very unconstrained life as a kid. My parents were very permissive about where we went, what we did, how we spent our time. Um, and it worked out. And so I just feel like it's the better way to parent. And there was a crazy thing that happened locally here in Northern Virginia. There was a set of parents who were arrested for allowing their child to walk to school. The child's walking along the road, and the police say, "What are you doing?" And they say, "I'm walking to school." And the parents are actually, they're arrested or charged with child neglect. And it caused a firestorm of discussion because half the people are saying they did nothing wrong, and the other half are saying, "How dare they let those children walk to school?" Well, I would be strongly on the side of let them walk to school, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think the world has changed a bit, right? As well, like I used to walk to school and or walk home at least from school, but it does feel like the world has got maybe a little bit more edgy. So, yeah, but I don't think, yeah, just let the kids walk, if it's if it's kind of in a decent area and stuff. Um, yeah, but it's funny that you say that about you and your wife. There's a great meme, and it's like a father and he's got his little baby and he's like throwing it up in the air and it's like it's like the dad sees it and it's like 3 meters, but the way the mom sees it is like 15 meters sort of thing, and I think that describes how I think ladies often see the physical side of things differently to us.
It's funny you say that because I felt like I was the world champion of throwing my kids really high into the air, which they loved. But, I would get them way up there and they would line up and beg me, throw me, throw me, throw me. And when I last did it with my daughter, she's much too old at this point. I'm struggling. And I remember, it was almost like a tear came to my eye where I realized this is the last time I'm going to be able to pick them up and throw them up in the air.
Man, I was watching this clip on Instagram last night, and it was this guy, and he was talking about like kids and like young kids, and he's like, like you find yourself, say, getting angry with this little kid that keeps on sort of nagging at you or whatever, or like asking you questions, or just on top of you and under your feet, and he's like you mustn't. He's like,
Hmm.
because they grow up so quickly and they change completely, and then you don't have that little kid anymore. They don't really say listen to you, and now you're having different sort of conversations with them, but these young years you must not sort of like you just mustn't sort of like push them away. And it just made me kind of really sad, like just thinking about like my daughter growing up. And it reminded me of a post that you actually wrote. I've got it here, about your son. You wrote, "Fathers to a son, please read this. We dropped off my oldest. We dropped off my oldest at college this week. He is 18, totally ready to leave the house, desperate for independence. This is the way it should be. But it has torn me up. Statistically, we have spent 90% of all the time we will ever together. I'm sad because I know I made a lot of mistakes during this time." And then you just said, mainly I was too hard on him because he was the oldest and he was a boy. So yeah, that even just like kind of reading that makes me emotional, and I can't imagine what that feeling must be like to have to say cheers to your kids. I was wondering what sort of, like, just in this moment, what sort of advice do you have for fathers, or for parents in general, just like when it comes to your children?
Yeah, I mean that was and I'm looking at the same thing with my daughter now going to school in a month
Mm.
at Virginia Tech, and it's going to be like what you just read all over again this year for me. Then I'll
Sorry,
have
man.
yeah, then I'll have just a 15-year-old in the house. So I, here's there was a moment when I was with the three of them in a stroller going down a sidewalk, and this old man came walking by, and you could just tell in his eyes he was almost joyful at just seeing like a father with three young kids. And he said something that everyone always tells you, right? It's going to go so quickly, you're not going to even believe it when it's done. And I remember so many people had said that, you just kind of get used to shrugging it off. It's like, yeah, yeah, okay.
Mm.
Yeah, I get it. But when he said it, I could just tell by his face that he was feeling it. You know what I mean? That he had had kids and that it went by too quickly. And I've tried to remind myself that, and it still goes by too quickly. And so I think one of the things that we have to, it's kind of like the physician's oath, first, do no harm. I think we must maintain a great relationship with our kids when they become adults, which means we can't push them into what we think they should be. We can't become judgmental. We can't, right? I mean, how many parents' relationships with their kids have you heard where the kid just says, I don't really have a great relationship with my parents. Something happened either during their childhood or young adulthood where that child made a decision, when I'm an adult, I don't want to spend time with them. That can't happen. We have to figure out a way. So I think the first piece of advice I would give is, do not get into a situation with your children where they become adults, they don't want to spend time with you. And that's a bunch of behaviors that can go back a long ways in your relationship with that child. And I regretted being very, 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 I would say, overly harsh with my oldest. I've tried to correct it with my two younger ones. And sorry, older kids like you. I explained to my son, I didn't know a lot at the time. Like I've gotten better. I've learned a lot of things, but like I just kind of screwed up a lot. I'm sorry. Um, so I think, being very quick to criticize or giving harsh punishments, don't really work that well and leave perhaps a lasting resentment. And that's, I think, the major piece of advice I would give is moderate your behavior towards your child with the eye that when they become adults, we want to be friends.
Mm. There was a great book I read called The Conscious Parent, and one of the basically the high level of it is that your kid is going to teach you more than you will be able to teach your kid, and it's like almost like, nah, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the adult. But her sort of spin on it is that your kid is going to sort of show you every bit of like unhealed trauma or issues or places where you didn't achieve, now you're pushing your kid to achieve, and all
Right.
these sort of things. And like, you kind of, if you're unaware of what your kid is teaching you, you're going to just repeat the mistakes that maybe you have learned or that your parents sort of made with you and stuff like that. So yeah, that it is the greatest opportunity to learn is having a kid, in my opinion. Like, you can do all the personal growth, whatever you want in the world, sort of courses and whatnot, but having a kid is definitely, wow, it's a whole nother level of personal growth.
It's why, I'm very pro family, pro having kids. I try to talk to young people about this all the time. You see that I talk about it a lot on social media. And that's one of the primary reasons is I just feel like it changes you fundamentally. It changes your outlook on the entire world and society in ways that it's kind of like that Mark Twain quote where he said, the man who carries a cat by its tail learns something that he can't learn any other way, right? It's like I can tell you about it, but you kind of have to see what happens, right? And being a parent is like that, where you think you know, but you don't, right? And then it changes everything about the world. And I mean, I've even heard people say, what if we had a requirement for public service, our politicians that say you have to be a parent? Well, I mean, that would really, I think it would give a different outlook on things, right? It's now suddenly I'm really worried about the next generation. Whereas I think, and believe me, I mean, there's people without kids that could feel empathetic towards the next generation. I'm not denying that, but I just feel like when you first hold that newborn baby in your hands, everything about your mindset changes towards the world, but especially about the future. It's like now I really don't want to screw this place up for you, you know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like you said, you can't explain it to say people that haven't experienced that, and yeah, and also your view on like everything changes. You like you now you want to be better, you want to be healthier because you want to live longer, you want to be around longer, you experience all these things, So it's yeah, it just changes you like 180 completely. I was wondering, where does your sort of like you have like a big interest, not just say obviously in your own kids, but like also in the next generation. Like you have a massive interest in sort of in helping them out, and I think that is so like commendable, and like because not many people are necessarily like that, we kind of just say look at kids like yeah cool whatever like I'm just but you're very different. It's like why are you like that? How did it sort of come about for you, and why is it important for other people to do it as well?
I feel like the one of the things I've seen in society is, everyone realizes we're kind of becoming more isolated, right? We
Mm.
don't hang out in villages like we used to. Um, I was just in Malta, and um, there was this strip of like kind of garage doors that weren't used during the day, but at night, old guys would go and open up the door, set up a table, and they'd just be playing cards, drinking beer. That's something that was normal in society. Most villages, there would be hangouts like that, and they're not really happening a lot anymore. And I think these kids are not having as much beneficial interactions with adults as they used to. And I think the things that were common for me are less common today, where if you were walking down the sidewalk during the school day, an adult would be like, "Why aren't you in school?" And then if you somehow got past that adult, the next adult would say, "Why aren't you in school?" Right? That doesn't really happen anymore. A kid could walk down the sidewalk and most people say, "I better mind my business. I don't want to be, seen as weird or right." I mean, there's all
Yeah.
sorts of reasons why you won't say anything to that kid. And so I see a lot of negative headwinds culturally that kids are putting up with. And I see a lot of what I call the death cult at work, where there are people who are downright evil in their messaging towards young people, saying this world is a hellhole. It's selfish of you to reproduce. Um, and just be just enjoy today, and who cares about the future? And all right, I mean, just all this, what I consider to be the opposite of the correct message,
Mm.
is making their way to the ears of these young people on social media mainly. And so one of the things that I feel is if any of us have any degree of success, we have an obligation to help the next generation in any way that we can. I mean, it's the classic, are you a good farmer? Then plant trees for the next generation. Are you a good carpenter? Build a schoolhouse for the next generation. If you're a good coach, coach the football team and try to instill values in the kids on the football team. These things, this type of service towards young people, I guess, is becoming less common. And so I guess the simple answer is I'm trying to do my part to fill the gap a little bit.
Um, you're optimistic, right? You, or at least you come across as like an optimistic guy. How optimistic are you then about the future for our kids? Because, like you said, things have actually changed quite a lot. Like, I mean, the world also seems a little bit unsafer, in some ways. So therefore, kids don't have the same opportunities as maybe we did, like running around on the streets and those sort of things. Do you think the ship can be turned around?
I think it's cyclical and I think it will turn around. I think oh, and by the way, you're a super positive and optimistic person too. I think you're kind of my role model for positive energy. So
Thanks, man.
yeah, so I think the book The Fourth Turning, I believe, has a lot of truth in it, where you have a generation of kids that are relatively independent, unprotected, kind of my Gen X generation, your generation, do whatever you want, right? And then we overcorrect and we become way too overprotective, and the kids are very sheltered and they don't get that same experience. And then, right, and so these things go in cycles. So we're in one of those cycles where we overcorrected,
Mm.
and we will go back to being, I think, more open and permissive for the next generation coming up. But but you live in the generation you're in, and the times you're in, and so for now, I feel that we uh should keep pushing kids to get out of their comfort zone, to go on adventures, to do experiential learning, because the general generational shift went the other way. We should kind of be pushing this way again, right? Nudging, nudging, nudging. And I think the trend towards negativity and snarkiness and that sort of thing online, I think we can do a lot to counteract it by choosing to be optimistic about the future and present the other view. I was talking to a young person 2 weeks ago who said, I became so concerned about this planet and what's happening in society that I was very close to killing myself. I was this close to suicide, and luckily something caused them to take a step back. And they said, you know what? I have to focus on just what I can control. And that person got into um, agriculture. They said, I can plant a plant and I can grow it and it can produce a tomato, and I can feel good about that, right? They said, if I can't control all this, I can at least control this. And luckily they turned away from it. But the negative messaging had almost pushed them to suicide. Nothing else, right? Just feeling like this is a terrible place, where I look at it and I say, we're on a paradise. I mean, this is a paradise planet. We have amazing science and opportunities, and right. I mean, just it's a great time to live. I keep pushing the other side of that because, for one, I believe it. Two, I believe you choose to be optimistic or pessimistic, and it fundamentally changes the opportunities that are presented to you in life. And three, it's something I just want to model for the young kids, because man, they get a lot of negative modeling elsewhere.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. And it's like, yeah, it's easy to go down one of those negative sort of spirals, right? And I can see, like, especially if you're a sort of certain type of person that is maybe easily influenced, you can go down like a very negative, dark place and then think, what the hell am I doing here? Because also, like you said, there's a lack of role models, for sure. And it's a nice segue, because actually, like when I was going through your social media feeds, like on X and on LinkedIn, I noticed there's like a real theme of teaching, right? And that's sort of, well, that's what comes out for me, at least. Like you're sharing like really valuable information across like quite a few different sort of topics. And you were also on a podcast recently, and the guy that interviewed you, he wrote a post. He said his name was Lawrence, and he said, a resume won't get you noticed anymore, but your digital presence will. Tech founder and entrepreneur Adam Rossi believes your online presence is now your most valuable professional asset. So, can you maybe just talk a little bit about that? Because I guess there's a pool of people to kind of like, like some of us are going like, just let's get offline, because it's actually messing us up. But you almost kind of saying a little bit in the opposite here. Maybe you still agree, like get a lot of offline time, but you're saying your online presence is really, really important. Sort of, you must maybe sort of hone it in, work on it. Can you just talk a little bit around that?
Yeah, I think what the main point I was trying to make is for young job seekers, AI has really, really, really changed the job market towards the negative, I feel, in that your digital resume, you apply to a job and an AI bot reads your resume and immediately racks and stacks it and says, this is a top decile candidate, this isn't. And you get an automated response and that says, thank you for applying, we'll let you know, and then you never hear. And so I feel like that resume, I used to, when I first got a professional job, I was printing out cover letters and resumes, putting them in envelopes, sent like 50, got, 2 invitations to an interview, got a job offer from one of those. I feel like now that digital resume is also just as passe as the paper resume was back then, because when someone applies to my company, I want to see their LinkedIn profile and I want to see, did they write an article on something? Have they published a project on something? Did they record a video on a topic they were interested in? It gives me a much better feeling of who they are than that digital resume. And I'm not unique in that. I think most jobs, employers are looking at a lot of that content now. And so there's a million jokes about LinkedIn, right? It's not cool. It's for, you know, nerds or whatever people say, right? They always dunk on LinkedIn. I say for a young person coming out of college, a lot of them have a negative view of LinkedIn. And I say, where do you think the employers are hanging out? It's on LinkedIn. And you don't have to have a huge job experience to make a compelling LinkedIn page or profile. I really want to just hear, okay, what are your interests? Let's publish articles on them. Let's generate some content on that. Let do a video where you just hold your phone and talk about what you're interested in that field of employment that you're trying to get your first job. You know, hanging out online uh, all the time is obviously not beneficial, but I just feel like for the young person who's looking for a professional job, especially that first entry level job where you've got nothing else, I feel it's really important. Now, I will take it a step further and say, I've met people who are mid-career, to senior, who have done such an effective job of publishing, being on podcasts, being interviewed for things, that digital presence has become so valuable and it goes with them, right? If their employer, doesn't treat them well, they can go out to the job market and that digital presence goes with them. They take another job and then it keeps following them around and it grows and it becomes a very valuable thing. I was talking to a guy in investment banking and he said, look, quite frankly, a lot of my peers are more talented and technically proficient than I am, but I had such a effective digital presence that I keep getting the opportunities that they aren't. It's
Yeah.
back to your networking thing, right? I mean, how do people know you? Well, this is one way they know you.
Yeah. And the other thing I think maybe people don't think enough about your online presence is it's also a trust builder, right? So, and let's be honest, like one of the most, if not the most important thing when it comes to relationships or somebody hiring you is trust. And
Yep.
if they can see that you like, you just like you become like a person that, like I said, you're posting interesting articles and you're giving your opinion on certain things and you're writing it well too. You're not like, yeah, not shouting at people and getting in arguments online. You're not like just posting political nonsense, et cetera, et cetera. Like that is a trust builder, right? And that's why people then gravitate towards you because they're like, he's a good bloke or she seems like a good girl. Cool. I want to now, be part of that network. So it is a huge thing that people must take into consideration.
And think how effective. it will be in the future. You see that Grok has access to all of our X posts, right? It doesn't take long to summarize. If you were to say, Grok, this is someone who's applying to my company. Here's their social media handle. Give me a dossier on them. Would they be a good fit for this role? You could see that that could very quickly come back and say, well, they seem to spend a lot of time arguing with people about politics. Is that, does that really fit with your culture? It
Yeah.
doesn't mine, right? I mean, I go to Total Shield and nobody's arguing about politics ever, right? It just is not something we waste time on. And I think people that are, you can, I think with one or two posts, anyone can look like anything, but over time, the real person comes out, right?
Absolutely. You have a very good filter, at least from what I've picked up, where there's certain things like you just don't talk about, right? I mean,
Yep.
like politics for sure, like religion, these things. I always remember growing up, my parents always said, you never talk about religion and politics with your friends, and I was like, now it's so true now these days, you know what I mean? Because these are subjects that are like cultish, right, in many ways. And you don't want to get caught tangled in these sort of discussions, especially online and especially with strangers and like, who knows, probably bots and all that sort of stuff. Because one, it's not good for your own mental health, but also, like you said, it's not good for your digital presence.
You're so right. I mean, it's I can't think of a worse way to spend my time than arguing with people about politics or religion or something, one of those topics on social media. I mean, there's no winning. I've never heard someone say, you know what, that was a great counter argument. Thank you.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it usually gets really rude
Yeah.
and you're never convincing someone, you're never proselytizing and they say, yes, I'm converting to your way of thinking. Yet we get baited into it. Sometimes I get baited into an argument and then I say, why did I just do that? I know better than that. I try not to talk a lot about religion because I think that it's not necessarily that it's polarizing like politics, but it's just so personal that I feel like there are things that most of us realize about the world and the universe and reality that we can, from any religious background, enjoy discussing. And then there are just the I'm becoming increasingly mindful, and believe me, I don't have a big belief in my influence on the world or my presence, I guess. But what I will say is I'm becoming increasingly sensitive to the fact that what I could say could be really hurtful to someone I don't know, who might be in a vulnerable state of mind, and there are things that I wish I could take back where I've been dismissive or curt with someone who's disagreed with me, and the thing I don't really there are a lot of really really smart folks on X, for example, that are genius level in certain deep subjects, but they can be really off-putting in how they interact with folks to the point where it feels like I had so much respect for you, but the way you just interacted with that random person takes it away,
Mm.
because it's so hurtful. And it's not like I'm a sensitive flower or anything, but I'm becoming increasingly conscious of the fact that you can really, really cut someone without even realizing it in your interactions.
Yeah, you definitely can. Talking about that, right? And I don't want this to sound weird or like condescending or anything either. Like, it's looking at your post, it's almost like you have this new confidence with what you're posting about. And I'm not saying you've never been a confident guy or anything like that, but it just seems like yeah, you're posting more and like you're really sharing like stuff. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing. That might not be the right word, but maybe just very intentional with kind of what you are sharing.
I
In
think
like
what
at least in the last year, like now that I've just gone through your feeds and stuff, I was like, wow, Adam's really sort of making a real good effort here to share great stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. I think what happened really is, I think for a lot of us, your first concern whenever you join a social media thing, your first concern is, well, nobody really cares what I have to say, right? And the successful kind of very, very influential social media accounts generally pick a very narrow topic and they talk about that all the time. And I was never going to do that. I just have a lot of different interests. And so, one day I'm really interested in investing, another day I'm really interested in entrepreneurship, another day I'm really interested in family stuff. I'm going to go all over the place. And so at first I felt like, well, I'm going to be way too scattered for anyone to really listen to me. So I probably was a little doubtful about, does it even make sense to put time into a longer form article or record a longer video? Because if nobody's listening to it, what's the point, right? And then when you get some feedback, I mean, I especially when there's offline DMs and someone says, I just had my son or daughter listen to that, and it it caused them to make a decision to stop smoking pot, or to, or it really affected someone in my right. I mean, that affected me in a beneficial way, and I realized I want to do this, right. I started getting a lot of those offline kind of DMs, and it made me feel like people are listening to some of this stuff, and I should probably take a little bit more effort to not just type with my thumbs, but sit down at the keyboard and type a little bit longer form. Um, and I find my mind going back to similar topics. So the same topic where I've talked about it before, but then I'll say, I talked about that in a very quick way, but I really feel like I didn't do it justice. I want to give it a better, um, I want to do a take two on that, and kind of dive deeper. So I think you're right. I mean, certainly over the past year, I've said to myself, I want to publish more meaningful stuff that is more helpful for people than just a casual thing or thought. And I've tried. So I appreciate the fact that it looks like that to you as well.
And the other thing, like so you said just now, you're very conscious of not sort of being, say, nasty, because like that one line can really impact somebody. You just never know kind of what they're going through. But on the flip side of that, it's like, with what you're posting now, these helpful things, is like that one helpful line that you wrote or something that you said can literally change something in somebody's life. Like you said, the guy that said, "Oh, my son stopped smoking pots," and that's probably just, you wrote a whole thing, but you just wrote like two specific sentences that the son read, and that's what spoke to him. And that, so that is the beauty of sharing good information online, or even like in person with your friends. Like, we mustn't be afraid to share good information.
I I recently wrote something on X because it has stuck with me. It was a single line at a gas station that has stuck with me since the age of 16 till now, where I had an 83 Volkswagen Rabbit. The paint was, kind of worn off of it. I was 17 actually. The paint was worn off of it. I had to, fix a lot of the stuff just to get it to run. And it was covered in dirt and dust. And I was filling up at the gas pump. And this old guy said to me, "Why is your car so dirty?" And I said, "Well, it's such a piece of crap. It's not worth washing." And he said, "If it's worth having, it's worth taking care of." And so it's one of those goofy encounters where I'm 51 years old. So over that many decades, I still find myself, if I own something and I'm not taking care of it, I remember that guy saying that to me, right? A random stranger. One sentence can change how you think about something for the rest of your life. And I agreed with him, right? I mean, he was right. It's one of those things too where, okay, that might have been a piece of crap to me, but to someone else, it would have been a treasure, right? And I should respect it. it's my car, right? It's getting me to where I need to be. And um, yeah, so it's one of those goofy sentences that sticks into your brain, and we all have them, right? Where it's profound. And man, I hope I do that for someone else at some point in a beneficial way. And I would hate for it to be the other way, right? Where someone said something so hurtful to me. I will say this, there's a lot of anonymous accounts on social media that are real people, they're not bots. And one of the things I always tell myself is, what if that's a really young person? What if that's a 17 or an 18-year-old? Do I really want to, you know, be nasty to a kid, right? You don't know who it is. I mean, that's the thing. And so I tend to say, remember, that could be like my son's friend behind that account, right?
Hmm.
You can't take a aggressive, you know, tone with them. You just don't know who they are.
What are your thoughts on like accounts that, are anonymous accounts? Do you think the internet would be a friendlier and better place if we all had to be ourselves, and you couldn't be an anonymous account?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to gravitate towards people like you that are, you are who you are, right? You post under your own name, you have your own face there, because I do think people are better behaved that way, right? I I don't see people that generally use their own picture with their real name behaving that way online. And when you're anonymous, it certainly lets you behave in ways that would be embarrassing to you personally if it was a face-to-face interaction. You would not do those or say those things if it was a face-to-face interaction. So, but on the other hand, I don't think I would want X, for example, to require that everyone go by their real name because you think about the person in Iran that can't, right? I mean, they're going over a VPN and they would be thrown in prison for just being on the network, much less saying something that the regime wouldn't like. Or so there's good reasons why it should be allowed, but I tend to gravitate towards people that use their face and name.
Yeah.
Just how I do it.
Yeah, yeah, me as well. I'm the same. Yeah, because people, yeah, they hide behind a lot of things, like, and it's the thing I don't like about the anonymous accounts is the nastiness. That's what kind of gets me. I'm like, wait, you're actually spineless. Like you're saying all this horrible, negative, really mean stuff to somebody, but you're actually a real coward because it's just behind a bot, and that's the stuff I really don't like. Like, yeah.
What I think is happening with those people are, you know, it's weird to me that you will post on any topic and someone will fly in some anonymous account and leave a cutting, nasty comment under it. And I always think to myself, why would they even waste the time typing that, right? It's a no value comment. It's negative. It's putting a negative thought into their brain. And like I tell kids all the time, you are what you think about all day long. You are what you think about all day long. If you're typing nasty comments under people's posts, you're filling your brain with nasty stuff and you become a nasty person that day. It is totally self-defeating. I don't know why people love to do it. And I think it's generally because they are going through some pain in their life and they want to share it with the rest of the world. And that's why they do it. And so, you know, it's it's spineless, it's nasty, it's counterproductive. I tend to maybe try to be a somewhat understanding as to why it's happening. I will say this, every once in a while, the kill them with kindness kind of response, which you do a lot of too, right? If somebody posts something that's negative, you'll just kind of say like, well, sorry you see it that way. You tend to give kind of a kind response. Every once in a while, I've seen someone say, you know what? I'm sorry I said that. It was uncalled for, right? You do every once in a while see it from an account. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, kind of made a difference with that one anonymous account,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of maybe one of the good lessons in life is like if you can sort of, keep on being a good person and, you somehow influence one person in the world, then that's a job well done, I think. Um, so just talking about behavior, actually, there's a post that you've written here, and it's not actually a post. The question is not around education as it might seem. It's more around behavior. So I'll just read it quickly, right? You wrote, take your kids out of school. A lot of parents worry their kids can't miss 5 days of class. But if you've got the chance to take them somewhere, take them. Travel is education, cultural exposure is important, go for it. Don't let a school calendar shrink your world. Now, again, like this question is more around like sort of behavior, right? Like, have you have this sort of like charming, rebellious sort of side to you that it seems like, from just from what I know about you. Has that always been in you since like you were a youngster? Or is it something that's sort of like grown more over the years for different reasons? I don't know.
I have a very, I've always been this way, and I feel that my belief is moral code trumps legal code. And I'll give you an example. This isn't necessarily a good recommendation for kids in school, but when I first went into school, I was considered to be rebellious to the point where I might be learning disabled. I was taken out of school. My mother was told you have to get him tested mentally at a local college because he might just be retarded.
What?
Yes, I was kicked out of my kindergarten class the first week for being non-compliant and rebellious, and my mother was in tears when she first picked me up. So when I was told you will be in school through kindergarten through 12th grade, it was kind of like, and I was shocked. I was like, I can't believe I'm being forced against my will this many years, right? So in high school, I said to everyone, my teachers, my parents, my classmates, I will never bring a book home. I will never do work outside of the school building. Any homework will only be done in the hallways between classes or on my bus ride to and from school. And I will never, ever study outside of the school for a test. And I never did. For 4 years, I never brought a book home. And so it was this code where I said, my time outside, if I'm being forced here, okay, fine, I'll comply. But my time outside of this is my time. I'll pursue the things that I'm interested in and that I feel like I want to do. And so I was able to make good enough grades at the time to get by, right? And if I was interested in the subject, like chemistry, science, math, straight A's. Other ones, D and F. I just was not interested in them, right? So I've always had this very strong kind of code of conduct that I live by, which is I'm not morally hurting anyone by doing that, but I feel strongly that this is the way I want my life to go. And my wife will be shocked all the time at my law breaking, right? Where I just say, well, that's a stupid regulation or law, therefore I don't respect it, right? And so one funny example, we when we bought our first house, it was the condo, or it was a townhouse for $160,000. It was all beat up, and the people had moved out of it already. And the real estate agent said, well, I probably shouldn't be doing this. You're closing, tomorrow or the next day, but here's the key. You could go ahead and stay in there if you wanted to. And I was like, great. So we go in and have a mattress on the floor and we're laying there. And every time a headlight kind of comes down the road, my wife would get up and say, do you think that's the police? What if we're here illegally? And I would say, Lila, just go back to sleep. Come on. I mean, yeah, technically we're breaking and entering, but we're closing on this house. I think I could explain it to the police if they get here. And she'd say, okay. And she'd lay back down and then a headlight would go by. Do you think that's the police? She's such a follower of a strict follower of laws and rules. We're just kind of wired differently that way. And so I feel that there's too many folks that will say, well, what they did was immoral, but it wasn't illegal. They just defrauded a bunch of investors in some SPAC and made $1 billion, but technically it wasn't against the law. So even though they rug pulled a bunch of investors, kind of good for them, right? There's that there's that feeling that a lot of people would say that, the law trumps morals, and I'm just so diametrically opposed to that. And I think there's so many stupid regulations in life. For example, someone told me in Europe or a lot of European countries, you have to have a doctor's note or a strong reason to have your kid out of school for any day, right? Just much less if you were to take them out for a week, it would be kind of unheard of. You can't take them out of school. So that's an example of a regulation that's neither law nor moral, but it's just a bureaucratic regulation that I would break that regulation all day, right? Well, your child might not graduate. I'd kind of be like, well, all right, fine. I'll find another school because we're not going to be there a bunch of days. That's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I'm the same as well. Like, there's just so much ridiculous laws out there that are made up by, these guys that have no sense of reality, I think. And also, you said quite a few times that there should be like I forget how you word it, but like a 10-year sort of circuit breaker where, all laws either get reviewed or deleted after, say, 10 years
A
because,
sunset clause. Yeah, they
yeah.
all sunset unless you want to re vote them back in. They go away.
Mm.
Scrape the barnacles off the boat, man. Just scrape them off.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at some of this stuff in, these days and you're like, what? Like it's just ridiculous. Like there's been no review ever of almost every single law, like what tax or whatever it is, like it's like let's stop overcomplicating the world. Let's actually try and make it more simple so that we have less red tape and actually, we can grow more and thrive more. Because a lot of that stuff just holds us back.
I was just on the sailboat reading a book that was talking about the differences between Greek, Roman, and uh, Carthage cultures. And there was a phrase there that said, the country that governs least governs best. And and it's been proven out historically again and again and again, right? Rome, eventually conquered totally and utterly Carthage and Greece because their system was less uh, um, bureaucratic than the others. And a lot of the provinces that Rome conquered essentially were allowed to self-govern without a whole lot of imposition of Roman law upon them. And so I think, historically we look at that and say, yeah, that works. Yet for a lot of countries like the United States, we now have hundreds of years of laws that are aggregating. And I'll still in business, I'll say, well, what's the reason for that? And they'll say, well, it's this law. And I'll say, that law was written in 1830. Are we sure it's still written exactly like we would need it today? It's
Yeah,
probably not, right?
exactly. We're busy moving into a new house soon. Like it's a rental, and like the lady today, she sent me this document to fill in, and I read it, and I was like, I don't know why I'm signing this, to be totally honest with you, because it actually has nothing really to do with me. It's like stuff. This is all to do with the owner, in terms of like the condition of the house and like the structure and all. I'm like, why am I having to sign this? And
Hmm.
of course, she doesn't. She won't know. But that's one of those things. Is like someone has created this silly law, and a lot of them effectively become box ticking exercises, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, pointless, really. Well, just real time wasters. Um, and then you add all these things up in the world, right? So this is just me and this lady today. Okay, maybe it was like a 5 minutes back and forth. Okay, um, but that's just this tiny thing. Imagine this happening 100,000 times, probably much more than that every single day. With all the people in the world, like it just becomes this massive time waste. Like, what could we be doing? What could we be achieving?
It's sucking the productivity and the human energy out of us. Yes, it's I always say to people, I have a question. What if we just didn't do this at all? What would happen? And a lot of times people are like, I don't know, maybe nothing. It's like, well, should we do it then? If this is truly, you can't think of maybe a potential downside is that if we just skip this whole thing, then I don't think we should be doing it, right? And I think a lot of people sleepwalk through life, and when they're told they have a firm deference towards authority. You walk into a restaurant and you see something and you're like, this makes no sense. They could save 20 minutes a customer if they just did it this way. I'll just speak up and say, hey, is the manager around? It's nothing bad. I just had, I just wanted to say like, hey, if you were to just cut, like you could save 20 minutes here, right? And a lot of times even the manager's just like, no, thanks. I'll tell the boss, right? You could tell they're just, there's no interest in making it better, right? It's just, that's the way we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that quite like frustrating with just humans in general. Um, that we're like, oh yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. It's just, and that's a weak response in my opinion. Like no, let's question it and let's go ask. How can we change this? Um, yeah, but yeah, I guess we just need to create a little bit of a ripple and get more people thinking like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, Adam. This is yeah, it's always just so great chatting to you, and I literally know that like if I ever had to, well, hopefully it does happen one day, like sit down and meet you in person, we'll chat for hours and days on end about various different things. But what is it like that excites you most about sort of the future, or do you have anything exciting coming up that that is cool for people to know?
I just feel this. I wake up most days and I feel like we are in the most interesting time in human history. And I see this world of possibilities, and there's so many things I still haven't seen or done. And my wife and I were just talking about this morning. We're 51 years old and we can still do so much, right? There's so much ahead of us. And it's sad to me where people get into a rut or get really, really deeply depressed and say, I don't know what to do with myself, because I just feel like there's so much we can be doing and learning and experiencing. And so I have a ton of things I'm looking forward to. I mean, uh, we have a bunch of trips planned. We're taking my daughter down to school next month, and that'll be a great experience for her. Um, I am interested in so many things in the business world, and there was a new um, tax law that came into effect in the United States, dealing with qualified small business stock, QSBS. And I looked at the new tax code and I thought, I want to start another company, uh, which I've had like two or three ideas bubbling, but it's just looking at this new tax code. I say, this is really pro small business. I want to now act on that. I want to take advantage of this. This is a much better tax regime than when I sold my software company. So it's nothing in particular, and it's everything, man. I'm so happy most days and optimistic about the future, and I wish everybody could feel the same way about the world, because I think that's the way the world really was meant to be. And we kind of get these blinders or this veil pulled over a lot of us where we don't see it all. We just don't see all the possibility out there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same as you. Like I'm like, man, there's so much to be excited about, in this world. Like, and it is a mindset thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's like, how do you wake up in the morning? Do you go, cool, today's going to be an awesome day, or today's going to suck? Like, and
Right.
I'm just like, why would you think today's going to suck? You know what I mean? You're not even giving yourself the opportunity to make it awesome. Um, yeah, but yeah, so I guess it's up to us to create those ripple effects, and just get to people thinking differently, like by posting cool stuff, interesting stuff, positive stuff, and
Yeah,
that's how we help the world. Um,
it is.
my final question is, what does being ridiculously human mean to you?
So I've already answered this once, but
Yeah.
I forgot what I said the first time. So what I'll say is, what I'll say is this. I feel like the we all have a idealized version of ourselves, and it typically forms when we're kids and we say, I'd really like to be like this. Um, But I think sometimes we let ourselves forget that vision that we had. And I think being ridiculously human means not forgetting it, reviving it from time to time, keeping it within our minds, and and remaining in a learning, striving mode to reach that idealized version of ourselves.
That's awesome. Thanks, man. It felt like you really thought about that, so I really appreciate that. But um, I I just want to say, like, I, I don't know what it is, but you feel like you are sort of my mentor, right? Like in this weird sort of I've never met you kind of way. Like I really listen to what you say and what you write, and I know that that's not just me. I know I know you have that influence on a lot of people, um, and you're also like a very giving guy. You know, we've spoken about networking and stuff, and you are the type of guy that always like does. You're like, yeah, you know, can I help you with this? Can I introduce you to this person? And that is like this amazing sort of character trait of yours. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do, bud. I cherish you as a buddy and a mentor. And I just want to, yeah, like say that I can't wait to one day catch up with you in person and have a nunchuck session or, you know,
Yeah.
beer and a coffee and stuff. And yeah, just thanks again for everything, man.
Well, thanks so much for saying that. I feel the same way about you. I love our conversations offline. I love our interactions. You have a great positive energy that just radiates out there. And every time I listen to your podcast, it comes through, right? I mean, I feel it. I know other people feel it. Keep it up and just keep doing what you're doing. I would say thank you as well. This is, uh, I think putting that positive energy out into the world is an amazing gift to humanity.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you, man.